Hey everyone! ChatGP Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today will be the start of a series that I'll be making called Disventure Camp Tier List. The title is self-explanatory. This series will consist of me ranking the Disventure Camp characters in a tier list based on different topics. I know that the expectation for my first tier list video would be for me to rank the Disventure Camp characters based on my personal preference. However, I think I'm going to wait for Disventure Camp All-Stars to end before I make that video, because I suspect that my opinions on the characters will change between now and the end of the season. Therefore, this video will cover a different topic. If there are any ideas for this series that you would like to see me play out, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Let's dive into this. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. Alright, the first topic that I'm choosing to tackle is something that I thought about after watching episode 9 of season 1. That topic is, who would I want with me during a zombie apocalypse? The final 7 campers in season 1 showed their strengths and weaknesses during the virtual reality challenge. This got me thinking about how the other characters would fare during a zombie apocalypse. And since tier lists usually involve some form of opinion from the creator, this tier list will be based on how much I would want them on my zombie apocalypse survival team. And without further ado, let's get started. Looking at this tier list, I separated it into 6 tiers, each marked with a quote from a Disventure Camp character. Starting at the top is, "You are everything I've ever wanted." This was said by James in episode 13 of season 2, and it's pretty self-explanatory. This tier is for the characters that I think would be incredibly proficient in a zombie apocalypse situation, and would be my first choices for a zombie apocalypse survival team. Next is, "It feels good to have this power," which was said by Ellie in episode 5 of season 1. These are for the characters that I think have demonstrated enough raw skills to be useful in a zombie apocalypse survival team, but they may have a red flag or two that would make me slightly concerned for them. Don't get me wrong, I would gladly welcome them onto the team, but I wouldn't be blind to their flaws either. After that is, "I love this happy family," which was said by Gabby in episode 6 of season 3. This tier will be for the characters that may not have demonstrated crucial survival skills, but their personality and demeanor is pleasant enough that I would like to keep them around for the sake of maintaining high morale among the team. Remember, it's important to survive, but it's also important to keep everyone's spirits up so that we have the motivation to fight in the first place. Then we have, "If you give me the slightest doubt," which was said by Miriam in episode 4 of season 3. This tier is for the characters that have a certain trait or traits that would make them useful in a survival situation, but they have a major red flag that would make me genuinely concerned to have them on my team. In other words, I would like to have them on the team, but if they show any sign that their red flag will get the team in trouble, then they're out. Second from the bottom is, "But I don't need you anymore," which was said by Fiore in episode 12 of season 1. This tier is for the characters that I simply wouldn't want on my zombie apocalypse survival team. Maybe they aren't that physically strong. Maybe they crumble under pressure. Maybe they aren't very team-oriented. Either way, I just don't think they would be useful on my team. And at the very bottom of the tier list is, "I'm not really sorry," which was said by Fiore in episode 9 of season 1. This tier is for the characters that I think would actively be a negative presence on a zombie apocalypse survival team. These characters are more likely to kill other members of their team rather than the zombies. Needless to say, I wouldn't want these characters anywhere near me. And with that, let's begin. To kick off this tier list, let's start with someone that I would definitely want on my survival team, and that person is Tom. We actually got to see Tom perform in the zombie apocalypse challenge in season 1, and I think he did well. He was a leader in a time of crisis, he's a decent shot with a firearm, he was strong enough to carry Miriam, he doesn't want to leave people behind if he can avoid it, and he wasn't afraid to make difficult decisions, such as deciding to cut off Ellie's arm. And in a zombie apocalypse where many people will be plagued by fear-induced indecision, having someone who's willing to make difficult decisions is a necessity. And judging from the first episode in season 1, he does have survival skills, which is critical in a zombie apocalypse. Sure, he might be a bit of a himbo. But I'd say that his himbo status affects his relationships more than his survival skills, so he should be fine. Therefore, I'm putting him at the very top in, "You are everything I've ever wanted. I'll follow you into battle any day, Tom." And to kick off the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about the person that Tom tried to save during the zombie apocalypse challenge, which is Ellie. I'll say it now, I'm not confident if Ellie is by my side. Even though Ellie would make tough decisions when necessary, I also feel like Ellie would make a lot of unnecessary decisions, either for entertainment or for the sake of being spiteful. Just like when she had Tom and Aiden kiss in episode 6 of season 3 just to upset Jake. So it wouldn't shock me if Ellie stirs up drama just for the sake of keeping herself entertained. And I also feel like Ellie is very self-serving. I don't think she would be able to make personal sacrifices for the good of the team. In canon, her villainous actions were fueled by her desire to win the money so that she would be able to survive in an expensive city like New York City. Looking at what Ellie is willing to do to win $3 million, I don't want to imagine what Ellie would do so that she can survive an apocalypse. And because of that, I'm going to put Ellie in. I'm not really sorry. I think Ellie would sacrifice anyone in the entire cast, healthy or not, if it meant that she survived just a little bit longer, and I can't have that on my team. Now that we're done with Ellie, let's talk about her girlfriend, Gabby. I think that Gabby has some positive traits. She's definitely not afraid to get physical, evidenced by how she tackled and beat up an armed Derek in the season 1 finale. And all things considered, she can be a very positive person to be around. From her interactions early in episode 6 of season 3, we know that she appreciates having a calm ambience, so she could contribute to boosting team morale. However, I am wary of her volatility. There are many instances where she's blown up at people, which could cause the team to turn against her. Sure, there were some instances where the blow up was earned, such as when Grett mistreated her. But in a life or death situation, we can't afford to have animosity in the team, and Gabby might add some unnecessary drama. Because of this, I'm going to put her in, if you give me the slightest doubt. I will gladly have her on the team if she's able to boost team morale. But if she causes the team to turn against her, I can't justify going to bat for her. Sorry, Gabs. But speaking of team morale, let's talk about Allie next. I actually think Allie would be decent at improving team morale. If she keeps a stash of Nintendo Switch consoles on her at all times, then the team will have an easy way of passing the time each day. And as a hardcore gamer girl, the odds of her having played a zombie apocalypse video game are pretty high, so maybe she can draw on those experiences to come up with a good survival plan. And physically, she's not weak at all. Episode 7 of Season 3 showed that she's able to stop a heavy, fast-moving ball all by herself, so she definitely has some strength. She could probably barricade a door by herself if we needed her to. However, she does wear glasses, so you could make the argument that losing her glasses could result in her demise. That being said, losing your glasses doesn't always mean that you automatically can't see anything. Therefore, I'm going to put Allie in. It feels good to have this power. She would be great to have on an apocalypse survival team, but I won't pretend that losing your glasses is a negligible event. Now that we're done with Allie, let's move on to one of her best friends, Tess. From what I've seen, people are starting to criticize Tess for her lack of impact in the All-Star season, with many calling her a support character and a therapist. However, these qualities would make her a decent person to have around during the apocalypse. There will inevitably be some dark days during the apocalypse, so it would be nice to have someone who's able to pick people up and give them the encouragement that they need to keep moving forward. Yeah, Tess may not bring much on the physical side, and strategy definitely isn't her strong suit, but I don't think she would hurt the team in any significant way either. I think she would be more than willing to follow the orders of a leader as long as the leader is competent, and having team cohesion is important for survival. Therefore, I'm going to put Tess in. I love this happy family. She would help contribute to boosting team morale rather than actually fighting off zombies, and I'm more than okay with that. But do you know who I think wouldn't boost team morale? Jake. It's no secret that Jake gets paranoid pretty easily. I know that at the time that I'm making this, Jake is actually starting to reflect on his actions a little bit, but we're only one episode removed from Fiore almost manipulating him into voting out Allie, so it's not enough for me to say he's not paranoid. And we know that Jake is also prone to getting into disagreements with people, such as when he started arguing with Allie seemingly out of nowhere, as well as some of the other campers being irritated by his actions as well. And challenge-wise, Jake hasn't shown that much prowess from a physical or strategic perspective either. So I don't think that Jake has anything to offer the team that would help us survive. Therefore, I'm going to put Jake in, but I don't need you anymore. I wouldn't want him on the team, but I also don't think he would sacrifice someone for purely selfish reasons. Jake might be paranoid, but I don't think he would go that far to get rid of his paranoia, even though some of his haters might think he would. Now let's move on to someone who doesn't hate Jake. It's Miriam. I actually like Miriam's skill set. Mentally, Miriam is one of the smarter characters in the series, primarily through her decision to follow her teammates in episode 4 of season 3, which resulted in her learning about the villains' alliance. Miriam is also pretty physical. She understands archery pretty well, she has the arm strength to row a canoe on her own, and she was able to throw a machete into a zombie's head from a pretty far distance. The one red flag that Miriam has would be her mobility. As of season 3, she was stated to have some back problems, and the season 1 finale showed that Miriam wasn't very fast relative to Ellie, who you could argue is in the prime of her life. This isn't enough for me to want to keep her off the team, but it's definitely something to watch out for. So, I'm going to put Miriam in. It feels good to have this power. She's definitely an asset. I just hope that we don't have to do too much running. But I would definitely want the season 1 winner on my side. Let's continue talking about the winners by talking about James. I actually don't think that James would be too helpful in a zombie apocalypse. James is commonly lauded for his strategic abilities, but James's few moves weren't too useful for him in the long run. His move to out Karol and Aiden's alliance only put him and Aiden in the minority, which he only survived because Riya switched Lill onto his team in exchange for Rosa Maria, giving him an ally and breaking the majority alliance on his team. Another example was when James argued with Jake over Aiden's faithfulness right before the elimination ceremony where he was voted out. Even though I do think that James was in the right, getting into an argument right before an elimination ceremony isn't the best strategic move. Strength-wise, he hasn't shown a lot of physical prowess, considering he's only won 3 challenges out of a possible 13, the Kissing Challenge, the Camping Challenge, and the Season 2 Finale Challenge. And only one of these wins was by his own merit. So all around, I don't think James would be too useful in a zombie apocalypse. However, I'm still going to put him in, if you give me the slightest doubt, right below Gabby. James probably wouldn't disrupt the cohesion in the team, but he has less upside than Gabby in this kind of situation. Hopefully he'll still have fans after the apocalypse blows over. But there is someone who won't have fans with or without the apocalypse, and that's Yul. I'll just get this out of the way, I can't have Yul on my team. With all his outbursts and fatphobic, homophobic, and racist remarks, he's going to turn the whole team against him, and they would probably kill him before the zombies would. And with his self-serving behavior, I think he would sacrifice everyone on the team if it meant saving himself, and we can't have that. He's going straight to "I'm not really sorry," and I'll put him below Ellie, because at least Ellie has a bit of a filter. The tier speaks for itself. I'm not really sorry about putting Yul in this tier. Now that Yul is behind us, let's turn to the person who hopefully won't have to deal with Yul for much longer. It's Grett. With the Grett that we know right now, I think she would be a great person to have on a survival team. Mentally, she's had to face a lot of haters criticizing her online. It takes a lot of mental strength to brush aside haters and continue being yourself. And in a stressful situation like a zombie apocalypse, mental strength is a very good trait to have, and I can see Grett being the one to stay calm under pressure and get everyone else under control if they're panicking. Physically, I can't say that she's the strongest camper out there, but I think she more than makes up for it with her current demeanor and mindset. Therefore, I'll put her in. I love this happy family. And I'll put her above Tess because I feel like Grett would be more active in her efforts to help the team, and I wouldn't be surprised if she stepped up into a leadership role if needed. Do you know who else could step into a leadership role? That's right, Lill. Lill's character is a Girl Scout troop leader. If there's anyone who knows anything about survival, it's Lill. It would be nice to have someone who's used to surviving in the woods if we end up needing to. Physically, we know that Lill is capable of fighting, considering how she knocked Gabby off of her platform in episode 4 of season 1. And when it comes to her demeanor, Lill seems to be an easy person to get along with, considering that her only issues with people were caused by Fiore managing to trick others into believing her over Lill. I see no red flags with Lill, so I'll easily put her in. You are everything I've ever wanted. And I'll put her above Tom, since her direct wilderness survival skills should be more applicable to this scenario than Tom's spy skills. Perfect pick for a leader in my book. Someone else who might try and take the lead is Hunter. Now physically, Hunter would be a great asset to a survival team. We know that he can build things, evidenced by how he built a pretty good sled in episode 9 of season 2. And we know that he's an accurate shooter, based on how he single-handedly popped 10 of his opponents' balloons out of a possible 12. And strategically, he isn't horrible, acknowledging how Fiore was the weak link on his team in season 3 and how Yul could be used as a shield back in season 2. However, one red flag that he has is the potential for conflict with other campers. Hunter's mindset is very logic-oriented. He tends to value logic over emotion, which could earn him the ire of people who think emotionally. An example of this was how he wasn't too sympathetic over Allie's feelings towards being hated online throughout season 3. This one was a little bit tougher, but I'm going to put him in. It feels good to have this power, but below Allie. Even though you could argue that Hunter's utility in survival situations is higher than Allie's utility, I feel like the potential for conflict due to Hunter's logic-oriented mindset puts him lower, even though I personally would have a hard time kicking him out over it. Keeping up the topic of logic, let's talk about Alec. Alec is probably one of the smarter members of the cast. He also seems to naturally fall into the role of a leader, considering how Alec was the one who brought together the Villains Alliance and was singled out as the leader for the Space Challenge in episode 8 of season 3. And he mentioned in the premiere of season 1 that he read a book on survival in isolated places, so that should be helpful too. Even though he was a villain in season 1, I wouldn't say that he's as selfish, merciless, or delusional as Ellie, Fiore, or Riya, making him a decent person to have around in a time of crisis. But just like Ellie, Alec also wears glasses, so it's worth questioning if Alec would be just as effective without his glasses. I think he belongs in the top tier, but if I'm maintaining consistency with my reasonings, I have to put him in. It feels good to have this power. However, I will put him at the top of this tier, since I think his overall skills are more pronounced than Allie. Allie is still great, though. With Alec out of the way, let's talk about Fiore. I really don't think Fiore would be good to have on a survival team, and this goes beyond Fiore's physical capabilities. Obviously, Fiore isn't very strong, and that's simply due to her age. But in this specific zombie apocalypse scenario, even Fiore's best trait wouldn't help her. Throughout the series, Fiore is known for being a master manipulator, even in Season 3 when people knew what she was capable of. But there is no way that Fiore would be able to manipulate zombies, since zombies don't think very much. Their only instinct is to feed on other humans in their way. Therefore, Fiore wouldn't be very useful on a survival team. And if you add this to her ruthlessness, unpopularity, and willingness to shoot people in the head, then the choice is clear. Fiore has earned herself a spot in I'm Not Really Sorry. But I'll put her above Yul, because I think Fiore at least has the capacity to care about someone other than herself, while Yul seems to be completely self-centered. Do you know who else is self-centered? Riya. I really don't see how Riya would survive a zombie apocalypse. Her biggest asset is her fame, and I don't think her fame will help her at a time when everyone is just trying to survive. Additionally, I don't think Riya has good decision-making skills. Instead of keeping her devoutly loyal ally by her side back in Season 2, she voted her out. And instead of splitting up a clear duo on her team, she voted out the guy who still had a bit of loyalty towards her, despite her treatment of him. And we know from Season 2's finale that Riya is not above leaving someone to die if it benefits her, and that's not someone that I'd want on the team. Therefore, I'm putting Riya in I'm Not Really Sorry, but I'll put her above Fiore, because at least Riya does have some form of physical prowess, while Fiore is generally weak on a physical level. Speaking of weak, let's talk about Dan next. Yes, Dan isn't a very physical individual. When he faced Ashley in episode 4 of Season 1, she had no trouble taking him out. But from a mental standpoint, Dan isn't that bad. Now, I understand that Dan is often criticized for not making a big impact through 7 episodes in Season 1. However, I do believe that Dan is capable of being a good strategist, but fails due to circumstances beyond his control. He made a good move by trying to form a majority alliance in episode 3 of Season 1, but failed because Grett tricked Tom into voting out Drew. Dan also made a good move in episode 7 of Season 1 by targeting Ellie to try to keep his original team together, but failed because Gabby saved Ellie with an immunity totem. Therefore, I feel like Dan is capable of coming up with logically sensible plans that could benefit a survival team. However, I also must point out that Dan has glasses, and there is proof that Dan can see without them, which is not a good look for his chances. Therefore, I have to put Dan in, if you give me the slightest doubt. He's definitely capable of helping the team, but there are red flags that would make people pause. I'll put him below Gabby, since Gabby has a wider range of ways in which she could help the team, while Dan really only has his strategic mindset to offer. Now, I've been talking a lot about the characters with eyeglasses. We might as well finish off that list by talking about Oliver. Much like the others, Oliver's usage of eyeglasses may make him vulnerable if the glasses are destroyed. However, Oliver's biggest asset is his physical ability. We know that he's resilient, considering how much of a beating he took from being Kristal's intern. And it seems like he's pretty fast, considering how his team placed him in the foot race for the first challenge of Season 2. I also think that Oliver can contribute towards boosting team morale, considering his generally positive and caring demeanor towards the other campers. Overall, I think having someone as hardworking as Oliver would benefit the team greatly. So, I'll put him in I Love This Happy Family, since his upside isn't as high as Ellie, Hunter, or Alec, but his red flag isn't enough to put him in the tier below him. And I'll put him above Tess because Oliver can contribute on an emotional and physical level, while Tess only really contributes on an emotional level. Good job, Oliver. Now that we're through with Oliver, let's talk about his boss, Kristal. Honestly, I don't think that there are many reasons to want Kristal on a survival team. We know that Kristal can't build stable structures, evidenced by the faulty challenge that she built in episode 7 of Season 2. Kristal also hasn't shown much physical prowess due to her status as a host. And due to her penchant for stirring up drama, I think she might disrupt team chemistry if she were a part of the survival team, and I can't have that. Therefore, I'm going to put Kristal in, but I don't need you anymore. The reason why I have her in this tier rather than the lowest tier is because I'm not convinced that Kristal would sacrifice others for her own selfish gain. Yes, she may not have treated Oliver well as an intern, but she did have a heartfelt moment with Lake in episode 6 of Season 2, so I'm inclined to think that she has a heart, and just hasn't had the chance to show it. On the topic of the hosts, let's talk about Trevor next. I hope many of you agree with me when I say this. Trevor is one of the most enjoyable characters in the series. His happy-go-lucky nature is just so fun to watch, and I think he would make it his mission to try and cheer people up during the apocalypse. And we know that he has some form of physical prowess, considering how he did the entire triathlon by himself in episode 5 of Season 3, even though he did collapse after completing it. And honestly, I don't think Trevor has any significant red flags with regards to surviving the zombie apocalypse, except for maybe how much he cares about Derek, but I don't think that would disrupt team cohesion on its own. Therefore, I'm going to put Trevor in, it feels good to have this power. I'll put him at the top of this tier due to his all-around capabilities and lack of significant red flags, but I'm not going to put him in the top tier since he hasn't shown any clear signs of having good survival skills. But overall, I definitely want him on my team over the other hosts. And to complete the hosting trio, let's talk about Derek. Unlike Trevor, I feel like Derek wouldn't be good for team morale. I think he's more interested in seeing people in pain rather than making sure they're safe, and I don't think he would have the team's best interest in mind. And considering how willing he was to pull a gun on the cops in episode 13 of season 1, the possibility of him pulling a gun on one of the campers is definitely real, and I don't want that to happen. His physicality isn't very pronounced either, considering how resistant he is to testing challenges in season 3. Therefore, I really don't see a benefit to having him on the team, and I actively think he would hurt the team if he were on it. So, he's going straight to I'm not really sorry. However, I will put him above Lill on the off chance that he has firearm training due to him owning a gun. It's not likely, but still possible. Let's move on to someone a little more likable as we talk about Ashley. I think Ashley might be the best person to have by your side in a zombie apocalypse. We know that Ashley is used to being outdoors, and she's shown an ability to forage for food pretty easily, so she would be great in a survival situation where we may have to be on the run for days at a time. And as a farmer, she should be able to help the team cultivate a sustainable food source once we establish a permanent safe area. And from a personality standpoint, Ashley is definitely capable of being supportive, evidenced by how she tries to help Jake through his inner conflict regarding Tom. At the same time, Ashley is more than capable of being assertive and stepping into a leadership role, which she did in episode 8 of season 3. Add this to Ashley's seemingly good skills with a weapon, and I think that the choice is clear. Ashley goes straight to the top tier, and I'll put her above Lill, because I think Ashley's more pronounced ability to fight would give her a greater chance of surviving in the event that the team needs to fight a group of zombies. Now that we talked about Ashley, let's talk about her boyfriend, Lill. Lill's best asset is definitely his strength. He's physically taller and stronger than pretty much everyone in the season 1 cast. And it's never a bad thing to have someone on your side who is capable of lifting heavy loads. And personality-wise, he seems like a nice guy, considering his interactions with Ashley. However, Lill has a pretty big red flag, which is that he's easily scared. He's afraid of nature, the dark, sliding down a hill, and probably more. Even though those fears are justifiable, they are nothing compared to the danger of facing flesh-consuming zombies. If Lill is terrified of sliding down a hill, being in a zombie apocalypse might cause him to freeze in fear, and that could be a liability if we task him with protecting some of the other members of the team. Because of this, I'm going to put him in if you give me the slightest doubt, and I'll put him at the bottom of that tier. Even though his strength is a pretty good upside, the danger associated with a zombie apocalypse pretty much guarantees that Lill would get scared, which is a major red flag for the team. Not to mention that Lill also screams really loud, so his screams could attract more zombies to us, which also isn't good. While Lill may be loud, let's talk about someone quiet, like Drew. Oddly enough, Drew might be someone that I want on my survival team. Yes, I know that he doesn't verbally communicate, so I probably wouldn't make him responsible for alerting us of an incoming zombie horde. But other than that, Drew actually has some promising traits. First of all, Drew showcased bravery in the paintball challenge when he continued shooting at Lill despite Lill shooting at him. And in a zombie apocalypse, bravery is a necessary trait to have in order to maintain composure against a zombie horde. And personality-wise, even though we really don't know much, if anything, about Drew's personality, he definitely doesn't seem too abrasive. And considering that he was able to have cordial interactions with Gabby of all people, I don't think it would be hard for him to get along with many of the other campers. So, I'm going to put him in I love this happy family, right below Tess. Even though Drew may not raise morale as effectively as Tess would, I have a hard time believing that he would negatively impact the morale of the group, so I wouldn't mind having him on the team. On the topic of raising morale, let's talk about Rosa Maria. Much like Tess, Rosa Maria is widely seen as a support character throughout her time in the series. Particularly towards Maggy, Lake, Riya, Aiden, and even Hunter. Therefore, she would probably find a way to raise the morale of the team during the darker days of the apocalypse. From a physical standpoint, although Rosa may not be the strongest camper in the series, it would seem that Rosa is one of the toughest and one of most fearless campers in the series, considering how willing she was to stand in the face of a serial killer and yell at them back in season 2. You could even make the argument that Rosa would be protective, considering that she let Lake run to safety while she bought her time by confronting the serial killer. Although Rosa hasn't shown much in the way of survival skills, her emotional and mental capabilities alone would make her a great person to have in a zombie apocalypse. So, I'm going to put her in the I love this happy family tier. I'll put her at the top because in addition to her kind nature, her willingness to stand her ground in the face of death is exactly what is needed in order to face a horde of zombies, giving her the leg up on everyone else in this tier. Now let's continue with someone close to Rosa Maria, it's Maggy. My opinion of Maggy is quite similar to my opinion of Lill. Maggy clearly has strength, that's not up for debate. She would probably do well if the team needs to carry a heavy load. And I think Maggy would be very protective of the team, considering how she gave Lill a black eye after he insulted Lake in episode 5 of season 2. The biggest red flag for me would be her bravery and her confidence. Maggy had a hard time standing up for herself in the face of adversity during her time in season 2, and it's hard for me to imagine Maggy standing up to a horde of zombies, who I would consider more terrifying than the campers she faced in season 2. Therefore, I'm not sure how effective Maggy would be in a zombie apocalypse. So, I'm going to put Maggy in, if you give me the slightest doubt, right above James. Her shaky confidence is too much of a red flag to put higher, but at least she would contribute more to the team than James would. Let's complete the friendship trio by talking about Lake. I think Lake would stand a good chance of surviving a zombie apocalypse. Physically, she's one of the more impressive campers in the series. She remained competitive against Hunter in episode 7 of season 2, and she was able to fight off a serial killer in the following episode. The latter situation showed that Lake is capable of defending herself when someone is trying to kill her, which is important for a zombie apocalypse when there are hordes of zombies trying to kill her. Personality-wise, Lake is also a cheerful individual who made plenty of friends throughout the show, so I don't think that Lake would cause any fractures among the team. With that being said, I'm going to put Lake in. It feels good to have this power, right in between Alec and Ellie. I'm keeping her out of the top tier because the people in that tier have demonstrated true outdoor survival skills, which Lake hasn't. And I have her behind Alec since I don't see Lake stepping up into a leadership position like Alec, but she's still ahead of Ellie because of her more pronounced fighting skills. But overall, I wouldn't mind having a friendly person like her on the team. Speaking of friendly, let's talk about one of Lake's friends, Aiden. At first glance, Aiden likely wouldn't bring much to the team from a physical standpoint. Aiden isn't known for his physical prowess. Aiden even admitted in the season 2 finale that Lake carried him through part 1 of the final challenge. However, what Aiden might lack in strength, he makes up for in personality. When people aren't messing with his mind, Aiden is generally a nice person to be around. He's also more than willing to be a support system for people who need it, as seen in his interactions with Lake in episode 5 of season 2. Also, he's canonically a great singer, so it would be cool if he could sing songs to help cheer up the group during some hard times. Taking all of this into account, I'm going to put him in I Love This Happy Family, right in between Tess and Drew. The reason why I don't have him higher is because Aiden does go through periods of sadness at times, and if that happens, that might not make him available to be someone's support system. But I don't think that I would hate him for that. But do you know who might hate Aiden for that? Maybe Karol. To start on the positive side, Karol definitely isn't afraid to be aggressive, as seen in her willingness to ram into Aiden and James's sled back in episode 9 of season 2. This aggression could help her fight off zombies when necessary. However, a major red flag with Karol is her attitude. It's no secret that Karol has a poor attitude relative to the rest of the cast. It's the reason why she received 3 votes at her very first elimination ceremony. If this attitude persists in the zombie apocalypse, people will start to turn against her, which would disrupt team cohesion. And I can imagine Karol being dismissive if she isn't the leader of the team, as I don't think she's the kind of person who wants to be told what to do. In the end, I just think that the attitude is too much of a red flag, so she has to go in I'm not really sorry, right in between Ellie and Riya. She would likely be less of a team player than Ellie, but she's also not as ruthless as Fiore or as selfish as Riya, so I guess she's not the worst possible option for a teammate. Speaking of worst possible options for a teammate, let's talk about Emily. Honestly, I think Emily suffers from the fact that we haven't seen very much of her, so there's not much to judge on. Physically, we really haven't seen any indication that she would be beneficial for the team, so that's not good. And personality-wise, the most notable thing about her is that she's not afraid to stir up drama, and in a zombie apocalypse, the last thing that we need is drama amongst the team members. Although she has shown some moments of being supportive through her interactions with Trevor, it's not enough to convince me that she would be a good asset to the team. I'm still going to put her in I'm not really sorry, but I'll still put her ahead of Karol because at least we know that Emily is capable of reeling it back and being genuinely supportive of people, despite her drama-oriented personality. Now let's turn towards someone much less dramatic, and talk about Kai. From a physical standpoint, Kai hasn't really shown anything remarkable or above average, so that's not good for him. However, considering Kai's spiritual roots, I think he would be very good at being a support system for the team when needed. After all, he was able to pinpoint that Lake was going through inner turmoil and also help motivate Maggy in episode 2 of season 2. Also, considering that he spent a few episodes surviving in the wild, it's reasonable to believe that he can help the team survive in the wilderness if needed, which is a great asset. There's not much to consider when looking at Kai's suitability, but what we've seen so far is very impressive. Due to this, I'm going to put Kai in I Love This Happy Family, right in between Rosa Maria and Grett. He would be higher if he showed some form of impressive physicality, but he hasn't, so this is the highest that I could realistically put him in this tier list. Speaking of physicality, let's talk about the villain of season 1's spy plot, Jensen. Just by looking at Jensen, you can tell that he's strong, which would be beneficial for a survival team. And we know that he's able to drive, so that's worth noting. But the biggest red flag with Jensen is trust. I'm not convinced that the others will be able to trust Jensen due to his reputation during Season 1. He massacred a lot of animals, almost stole the $1 million prize, and could have killed Tom if one more thing goes wrong during the finale. He may be strong, but I can't have the team distrust each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was willing to sacrifice other members of the team to save himself. That's the vibe that I get. Because of this, I'm going to put Jensen in. I'm not really sorry. But I will put him above Emily and below Ellie because I feel like his strength makes him a more valuable teammate than the people below him, even if it would be hard to trust him. Add him to the list of Disventure Camp staff members that I wouldn't trust. Let's round out the staff by talking about Marcus and Nina. We don't know much about Marcus, but what we do know is that he can drive a bus and he's protective of Nina. Having someone who can drive and be protective isn't a bad thing, even if he doesn't show much else from a physical standpoint. As for Nina, she's the smallest character in this tier list, so I question how effective she would be from a physical standpoint. She's also really creepy, which could lower team morale. However, considering that Nina is a puppet that is capable of walking and acting on her own accord, you have to wonder whether or not Nina has supernatural powers. Maybe she's an entity that is capable of surviving the bleakest of situations. And as a puppet, can she even be infected by the zombie virus? If she can't, then she could be really useful if we need someone to kill a horde of zombies for us. Therefore, I'm going to put Marcus and Nina in, if you give me the slightest doubt. I will put them at the top of this tier though, because their upside is oddly high, and I would be willing to give them a chance if needed. Not bad for an old man and a puppet. Speaking of old men, let's talk about Connor. Much like Miriam, Connor's age probably acts against him here, considering how he struggled to lift Riya in the finale of Season 2. And there's no real indicator that Connor is knowledgeable on surviving in the wild, so that's a knock against him as well. But from an emotional standpoint, Connor probably wouldn't be too bad at providing emotional support, considering how he was able to help Kai with his problems after fighting with Lill and help Hunter realize that Allie and Tess were in love with him. And considering Connor's background as a businessman, he would probably know a lot about leadership and maximizing assets, which would be useful when managing the dynamics of the team. So overall, I'm going to put Connor in. I love this happy family, right in between Rosa Maria and Kai. Connor might have some red flags, but I think the green flags that he has more than makes up for it. He's more than just a rich guy, you know. And speaking of rich guys, let's round out the cast by talking about another rich fellow, Nick. Nick doesn't really have much to offer with regards to survival. He admitted in episode 1 of Season 1 that he's never gone camping, so he probably doesn't know anything regarding outdoor survival. We also know that he's not very physical, considering how Alec noted that he was one of the worst challenge competitors in episode 4 of Season 1. And personality-wise, I don't think he would be a good support system for anyone, and he might be one of the more confrontational campers that we have in this cast, considering how willing he was to be confrontational with Lill. There just aren't any prominent green flags for him in a zombie apocalypse. With that being said, I'm going to put him at the bottom of, but I don't need you anymore. The reason why I don't have him in the lowest tier is because I feel like everyone in the lowest tier would willingly sacrifice another member of the team if it meant that they survive, but I'm not convinced that Nick would do that. He might hide, but I don't think he would shove someone in front of a zombie to act as bait. That's just my take on it. Alright, now that I've ranked all the characters, let's take a look at the full tier list. Overall, I think it's pretty balanced. There is a trend that the most villainous characters end up in the lowest tier, but that's not surprising to me. I'm sure that there will be some debate over the placement of certain campers. Am I ranking Gabby too low? Am I ranking Tom too high? Am I overvaluing the importance of emotional support? Am I undervaluing the importance of strength? Feel free to state your thoughts in the comments section below. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? Do you agree with my tier list? Do you disagree? Who would you want on your side if a zombie apocalypse occurred? And are there any major changes that you would make to this tier list? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. Always stay alert, because you never know when someone will shoot an arrow into your chest out of nowhere. Thank you, and farewell.